Hello there guys, welcome back to our VB.NET tutorials. Today we are going to continue our library management system. So if you check the Excel file, last thing we did is we finished part of the web user interface. Okay, we left the web registration. Okay, and if you want to remember what we did last time, before running that, I modified the students table. Okay, I added the user as a student. I modified the user or student with IDA and make it convert that to Todd. So this is the ID, the student here. Let's say first here, the contact, TD, okay, or TOD, whatever. Now the email is going to be todd@gmail.com, for example. Student password should be encrypted, and what's important is the student login name. So yeah, now as soon as you select another record, the data will be saved. Make sure that this project or the web project is being selected as the startup, and next we will go and save this here, and finally we will run the web project, and we will enter the student name Todd and the password 123 and log in. We will get the result or access the previous interface. So far so good. So I'll close this one. Good. Now let's see what's still to be done. So we have the registration. Registration, we'll put it at the very end. We don't need that. We have the fines table. Well, actually, I don't want to work on the fines now for one simple reason. We didn't finish the rest of the application. We need to perform we need to set the queues, we need to perform borrowing and stuff like that. So now we are gonna work with, working with the queue. So we have the book waiting queue. So first thing we need to do is define the queue table. And if we go to the database design, let's go to the book waiting queue. So what do we have? We have student ID and the book ID. They are both the primary key and the book order. Okay, so it's like the ticket for the student, right? That's like a ticketing system. So each student will get a ticket, the ticket increases, and so on. So we need to work on that. Let's start on this, and yeah, let me have a look here. So I will open the students table. For one simple reason, I want to check the data type. Here I will go to the properties just to remember the data type. Sorry for moving the mouse a lot. Sorry about that. So the student ID, as you can see, is a numeric, so it's a number. And also we need to set what? We set the book ID. So this is the book ID, and what we have, if you go to the properties, we have the unbar char, and I wonder why did I choose unbar char. Maybe I should have chosen a number, but anyway, it has been a long time, so I forgot a lot of things. Anyway, so since we know the data types now, we can create the table. So right click here, and I'm gonna say add a new table. Okay, so the first thing we are gonna specify is what? It's gonna be student ID, and the data type is in numeric. There we go. And the next one is the book ID, and the book ID. Now, before before I continue on bar chart, now let's go back to this one. The reason I'm selecting this is because I want to know the length. The length is 100 here, so in our table, this one should be also 100. Okay, and we have to say the order. Now, or order is a reserved keyword. So in this case, I'm going to say booking order. Okay, you can use that to create a problem for you. So it's going to be booking orders. And this should be in numeric. Okay, this shouldn't be null, shouldn't be null, shouldn't be null. And I will select these two. Wait a second. This and this. Right click and set as a primary key. This is our primary key over here. No problem. And the reason we want to make these two as a primary key is we don't want this person booking the same book twice. Okay, so this is very important. Now, after setting this, I suppose we should save. So I click here, and the name of the table is going to be what? Booking queue, right? Yes. So let's go just to make sure. Yes. Book waiting queue or booking list, whatever. We have freedom here. So what's the easiest thing? So I'm gonna say queue, right? I think queue will be enough. So I'm gonna hit OK. That's it. Now this is finished. I'm gonna close this, and close this. Now let's go to the Excel file and let's continue. So you define the queue table. Done. Next we need to define the queue class. So we'll have to go back here. Now let's go to our library. So right click, I'm going to say add a class, and I'm going to call this queue class. So queue class, I'm going to say add. Very easy, very simple. I'm going to just look at the previous one just to remember what I used to do here. So basically the old and the new, and just remembering, sorry about that. Okay, so we have the get methods and the set methods. You can use the properties, but for now we just use this. And yeah, what also do we have? Also record change and update database. Okay, so I'll copy the code here and I will paste it here and then make some modifications. So I will remove the last one, go to the very beginning, and yes. Okay, so I remove the beginning, and here now this class is used to manage booking queues. Okay, no problem. So members of the class. Now we have 3 members basically. So I'll make this simple trick. Right click over here. I'm gonna rename this variable, and this is gonna be book ID, and it is gonna be string. No problem with that. And it will change it all of the methods. Right click. I'm gonna rename the second one. I'm gonna say student ID. No problem. Add and done. And I will rename the last one. I'm gonna say booking order, and I'm gonna hit OK as well. So basically we finished naming these variables. Right click over here, rename. This is gonna be what? This is gonna be old book ID. Good. Rename this one as well. This is gonna be old student ID and old booking order. Rename old booking order. Very simple, very straightforward. Now this one, this method, I'm gonna rename it. This is gonna be set book ID. Set book ID. Wonderful. I will rename this part set sorry uh, book ID. I'm gonna put a V book ID, no problem here. So you can see the rename is cool because it changes everything for you right away. So there are a few things here I forgot. This one should be integer, or let's say long, no problem. It's going to be long as well, no problem. The student ID here is long, and this one's also long. Now, continuing with this, I'm gonna rename it to what? Set student ID, right? Okay, rename student ID. Wonderful. And this one is for maybe I will just type, it will be a little bit faster. Set booking order fee booking order, and this is going to be the booking order. Wonderful. Another thing here, this should be long. Okay, so you can see the reason I copied and paste, because it's basically the same code, or let's say the same structure of the code. I'm just changing names, and I'm just changing name. This is what's happening. There is, it's the same technique. So here we have get what? We need to get the book ID. This is a string, return me book ID, and this is gonna be get student ID as long. Wonderful. And get section. There's gonna be booking order as long. Okay. So now insert into database. Same thing goes here. Queue. Wonderful. And we have book ID, student ID, and booking order. The rest stays the same, no problem. A student, okay, that's good. Now for loading, also almost the same. So queue paste. Now this one's not exactly the same, because select star from queue, where we need to pass two parameters. We need to pass the book ID, okay, when loading, and we need to pass the student ID as long. So select star from queue where book ID equals something and student ID equal something else. And the reason for that is very simple. We want the key consists of two columns, so we need to specify two variables. Okay, so here there's going to be what? The book ID and the student ID. Wonderful. As for this one, there's going to be what? Book ID, and what's this one? Gonna be student ID, and there's gonna be what? Booking order. Just to make sure I haven't forgot the names, I'll come over here, open the Q table, student ID, book ID, and booking order. So the names are correct. Wonderful. And yes, we finished this one as well. Was record changed? So this one's gonna be Q class. Now I need to pass the old book ID, b.old student ID. Okay, and I will check based on that. Next. So now ftmp dot old student ID doesn't equal old student ID, and it was changed. B dot old book ID old book ID, and finally booking order. Where's that? booking order. Okay, continuing the recording. So for last time I finished the booking order. So here, booking order. Okay, so this class finished. We have the update. So there's gonna be update queue set now. What do we need to? Yeah, we need to lock it. So let me now. The thing here, in order to lock a single record, we need to specify two values. In this case, I'm gonna say what book ID equal at 0, student ID equal at 1, where there's the condition over here, book ID equal at 0 and student ID equal at 1. Right? So all book ID, oh sorry, yeah, b.old student ID. So this should do the trick and perform the locking process. So if the record was changed, trigger an error. Otherwise, we are gonna update queue here, queue here, and queue here as well. In the first case, we are gonna set the book ID to something. In the second case, we're gonna say set the student ID to something. Last case, booking order. Okay, and this is gonna be wonderful. Now, here we are gonna condition book ID equal at 1, and now this is gonna be a little bit tricky. Because there's gonna be student ID equal at 2. We are going. You must pay very much attention to this one. Book ID, this one, and student ID equal at 2. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste this. Now, pay a lot of attention here. Now, in this statement, I am updating the book ID. So, book ID, right? But our condition is we are checking against the old book ID and also old student ID. Now, I will just copy and paste and then explain what's gonna happen just to make things a little bit faster. So here we have the book ID, right? We have here the student ID, and the last one is booking order. Okay, so the first one, the record is old, so the book ID is the same. The old book ID, what's available in the database matches the old book ID and the old student ID, but we have just upgraded the book ID here. I mean, after the execution of this statement. So the second statement will have no effect at all because the old book ID does not exist in the database for that specific record. Does that make sense? Here in this statement we are changing the book ID, so using this value, the old value will not be valid. Because of that, you need to say use the new book ID, right? And the last one, here, now notice, when you reach this statement, the book ID has been updated, the student ID has been updated, so you need to use the new ones, okay? Student ID, okay? Yeah, and this is the issue. Now, if I created, let's say previously, a key, okay, like an ID, instead of using this complex method, I could have used that ID in order to update, and no problem will happen. But because of the way I created the table, I made it a little bit more complex. It's okay, but you must pay attention to such things, otherwise you will get errors. Now all book ID, all student ID, oh, okay, everything's fine. Yeah. Also remove from database, update queue, set uh, book ID equal at 0, where book ID equal and student ID equals at 1. So all book ID dot student ID. This should be old student ID. Okay, so this will block the record, and then this is gonna kill it. So Q student ID and book ID. Make sure to use two variables, otherwise you will remove all the booking for specific, either student or a specific book. So just pay attention to that. So old student ID dot old book ID, and that's it. Let me see if there's anything else. Full data grid view. I'm gonna change this. Full data grid with booking. I will work on that later on. Okay. And the GUI I will add later on, and also filling the combo box. Yeah. So now we finished the basic functionality. I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna go and yeah, I've defined the queue object. I created the add item to the queue, load item from the queue, update queue information. And by the way, display queue for book. Now I suppose I shouldn't have removed the previous code. It's okay, but the thing here, I didn't test that code, right? So we need to go and test it. So I'll save here. Let's go to our test project. Okay, before moving further, so set this as startup. Let's go here. Let's go to our form, and let's go to this one. Double click here. Okay, and let's go down, down, down. Okay, there we go. Remove student information, whatever. Okay. Now, so test number 22. Here we are gonna insert booking information, right? So what are we gonna do? Dimension queue as new. This should be what library management system dot queue class. There we go. Queue dot set book ID, and I will try to use one of the books I've added here previously. Student class. Is there a book? There should be a book over here. Okay, so I've removed it. So I'm gonna see PK2, PK, not the book. This is a shelf. So add a new book. There we go. Control C. Go to the very end. Wonderful. So the first part is going to add a book. PK3. Okay, so we create PK2, PK3. There's going to be a book. So this book ID. This is going to be a string, right? So bk3 in this case. Okay, some book. Okay, a book. Okay, whatever. The author, Mr. X. Okay. Okay, streets of Rage, barcode, whatever. Book price. Okay, whatever. Shelf number, publication, yeah, and so on. Now, the book ID is gonna be BK. Sorry, I haven't inserted that into the database. If BK3 insert into DB. Okay, so one thing I forgot here. This is BK3 object, so I have to update the variable. Wonderful. BK3 DBMS, right? DB or what is it? OBJ. Sorry, OBJ. I am forgetting a lot. Not. Okay. Dimension FLG as boolean is going to be equal true. So if this one didn't work, then FLG equal false. Okay, and we are going to use that for later. Okay, so now, assuming everything is fine, we are going to do what? So if FLG, then we will go to the new step over here, and what should we do? Set book ID bk3 dot get book ID. Wonderful. And then also we go to Q dot set student ID. We need a student from here. Where is the student? st what? Okay, st2. st2 student ID. st2 gets student ID. Wonderful. And after that, q dot set order, let's say order 9, whatever. And finally, we need to insert into the database. So if q dot insert into database obj else, then actually if not, and in that case there's a failure. FLG equal what? False. So here we are gonna just check if not flag. This means there's an error. Otherwise, we display everything's fine. Next, we have these two. Copy. Okay. So test22. Test22. Okay. So the type of test, I'm gonna add detail. Okay, although I didn't do before, but this is gonna be what? Insert item to queue. Wonderful. Insert item to queue. Yeah, just to make it a little bit more clear. And I'm gonna save. Okay, so it looks like this. Define a queue object, fill it, insert it to database, all's fine. Display a good message. So we're gonna run the test now and go, please work. And everything is fine. The insertion is successful. Next, we need to do a load. So here, we are gonna say, go over here. Let's go to this one. So testing loading queue item. So dimension q2 as library management system .queue class, And what's gonna happen? Okay, so that's half an hour. Continuing now. Yeah, so here we this should be a new object. Okay, continuing the process. Now we need to load the item. So if not q2.load from database, and I need to pass the database object followed by the book ID. Now the book ID is bk3.getBookID, and the student ID, this is gonna be what student I used, st2 get student ID. Then okay, so actually if everything's fine, I can just save. This is gonna be what load queue item. Okay, load queue item. There we go. So very simple. Test static also. Save, run, and go. Wish me luck. Oh, failed. So now let's have a look why it didn't work. That's good. So I'll just click here and run. Go. Wonderful. So now I will use step into. There we go. I suppose step into again. Step into. Wonderful. There we go. So now I will use step over. Q book ID, student ID, book ID. There we go. If wonderful. Oh, it didn't find any record, and this is the reason. So what do we have? Select star from Q, book ID and student ID. Book ID 36, student ID 25. Book ID and student ID. Student ID. We need to check the previous one probably. Right? So I'm gonna sorry about that. Now let's go back to our testing application. This is the form, right? So we have this one. Wonderful. And I will click again. Good. So now step into. Oh, now check this. I think I know what the problem is. I'm gonna stop this. So when we want to insert, so check the queue. We have student ID, book ID, and book ordering. So what that means, check this statement, insert it into queue the values. The book ID will go to the first column, which is student ID, and the student ID will go to the second column, which is book ID. The reason for that, this is a variable name, it cannot distinguish. What we need to do, if we change the order here, we need to specify things. So in this case, I'm going to use student ID. Oh, sorry. The first parameter should be book ID, second student ID, and third booking order. If you want to avoid errors, always mention these, because if for some reason you change the order here when you create the queue table, for example, and you depend totally on, let's say, the order, you can get errors very easily. So we're gonna save this here, and now we're gonna run and go. Remove this breakpoint, continue, remove the second breakpoint, and continue. And now it's working perfectly fine. Okay, as you can see, wonderful. So let me close this. That's good. So now we finished these two. Next we need to remove, sorry, I didn't create a remove method, or did I can't remember. Anyway, so let's make an update here. I will just change one thing, and that thing is the order. So here, let's have a look. 24, you can say update. Let's say q2 dot set booking order, okay, something like this. And now fq2 dot update, okay, followed by false. Wonderful. And then in this case, update the queue. Update queue item means it's working fine. Failed. Updating queue item. And save that. Go over here and go. And update is having a problem. Yeah. So here, let's put a breakpoint again. Run. Wonderful. Click and step into. Let's have a look. So step over book ID, student ID, book ID, student ID, equal, yeah. Oh, it thinks that some records has been changed. Let me get to this. And now I'm gonna step into this one. Load, okay, old book ID, old student ID. So we have old book ID 54, old student ID 25. Let me go to step into old book ID, old student ID. Okay, so step over, whatever. Okay, so we got the book ID, 54 student ID, and the booking order. No problem. Continue. No problem so far. Good. So we loaded this one. Next, what's gonna, oh, so TMP, now this one's 25, this one's 25, this one's 54, this one's 54, this one is 9. Oh, wait a second. Oh, this should be old. The word here should be OLD. Right. Sorry, not here. Dot old. Okay, not the updated one. So now, yeah. So the error was here, and if we continue, yeah, all is fine. Okay. So the last thing we need to check is the remove, right? I hope I did a remove here. So I will just copy over here and paste. Okay, just to make things faster. 25. Remove queue item. So here, q2 dot remove from database obj followed by false. There we go. Now this test 25. Remove queue item. Test 25 failed. Remove queue item. Wonderful. Save that. Save. Run. And go. Wonderful, it's working. So now we created and tested the class. Everything seems to be okay. What need to be done is displaying the queues in the administrator and also in the web. Okay, so these will need a little bit of work. I suppose that will be all for today. I'm going to save this. I will upload the source code to the website so you could download it from here, and you can see the progress here. It's about 68%, something like that. That's okay, I suppose. And that's it. Thanks for watching and wishing you a wonderful day. Okay, bye bye.